They can expect to treat mental health care just the same as they treat physical health care.
Yeah.
And it's way past time they did that.
House Speaker David Ralston announces a bipartisan effort on a landmark bill to reform Georgia's mental health care. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on this day 7 of the legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry. We'll have lots more coming up on the 74-page House Bill 1013, the massive mental health bill, legislation that some say is 20 years in the making. Each legislative session also, education issues receive a lot of attention. And this year is no different. Education is getting a boost in the proposed budget with raises for teachers and others who work in schools. But there are social issues that are bubbling up around the country that are gaining traction under the Gold Dome. Among the issues, critical race theory and banning obscene books. We're going to spend time on the show hearing from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about a wide range of education topics. But first, let's head to the Gold Dome for a look at what happened there today from Capitol correspondent Brenda Waters. Hi, Brenda.
Hi, Donna. Now, if you recall, on day 1 of the legislative session, Speaker Ralston said one of his priorities was mental health. Well, today he held a press conference announcing HB 1013 before an enthusiastic crowd.
Just prior to me leaving the floor of the House a few moments ago, I filed House Bill 1013.
Speaker Ralston says it was his wife who encouraged him to do something that would help people, something people would remember past the next election. It was that push that helped inspire the mental health bill.
There is no issue this session more important to me than this issue. I am tired of telling desperate and hurting families that we have no treatment options available in Georgia. I am tired of looking in the faces of mothers who have lost a child because they saw no hope. And I'm tired of seeing the faces of those whose spiral downward has been fed by substance abuse.
The Speaker calls this a landmark comprehensive bill that will reform Georgia's mental health care delivery system and improve client outcomes. One of the co-sponsors of HB 1013 is Representative Todd Jones, who says this bill is not only policy, it's personal.
My wife and I have 4 children, and our oldest child is 25, and he was diagnosed or dual diagnosed when he was 19 with severe mental illness and also drug addiction.
Representative Jones says he doesn't want the 10.7 million Georgians who suffer from mental illness to go through what he and his family have endured.
Right now in the state of Georgia, the family really doesn't even know where due north is. They don't know where to go to get the help to initiate. They don't know where to go to get the ongoing assistance. And this is something to me that was so personal to me, but also really professionally important to me to make sure that this bill really knocked down the key blocking and tackling issues around mental health.
Representative Mary Margaret Oliver is the other co-sponsor of this bill.
This is going to make a difference. We recognize that Georgia's families are really hurting on the issues of mental health. We know that, and we have to do a better job.
Legislators haven't come up with a final price tag for the 74-page bill, but they say they will finalize the cost before day 28 of the legislative session. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is sometimes covered by workers' compensation, but not always. Representative Greg Kennard wants that to change with House Bill 855.
HB 855 aims to bring parity to workers' compensation. PTSD would be treated the same way as breaking a limb, being shot, third-degree burns, or any other on-the-job physical injury. It would have to meet the same burden of proof, clear the same bar, meet the same scrutiny as any other phiscal injury claim.
2 people spoke pushing for the passage of this bill. Brandy Cook, who lost her brother.
My brother was Chris Baggett. He worked at Gwinnett County Fire Department for 21 years. Through those years, he rose up the ranks to become a battalion chief at the young age of 39. At 39 years old, he lost his battle to PTSD and committed suicide. We are calling for you to help us get HB 855 passed.
Another Georgian hoping to get this bill passed speaks from personal experience.
I'm a former officer who was injured in the line of duty and who was diagnosed with PTSD. It took a while for me to accept that I had PTSD. And HB 855 will help us.
So, Donna, it was all about mental health today and compensation. That's my Capitol Report. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. We're going to spend the rest of the show talking about a wide range of education issues. Joining me are Republican Representative Brad Thomas of Holly Springs in Cherokee County and Democratic Representative Misha Maynor of Atlanta, who is on the House Education Committee. So I want to thank you both for being on Lawmakers. I want to start with you both talking about critical race theory because Representative Thomas, you are the lead sponsor on the House Bill 888. And Representative Maynor, you wrote an opinion piece called A Thoughtful Critique of House Bill 888. So let's get started with that. Representative Thomas, we know that critical race theory is not taught in Georgia's K-12 schools, but what are your reasons for wanting to eliminate a law about something that doesn't really exist?
Well, first of all, I would say that there has been significant academic articles about critical race theory, and I would also say that there is concerns that this is propagated into the K through 12. But what's really important is what do we define critical race theory as? And for me, what critical race theory means, it's really divisive ideology, and you hear the term divisive concepts, and that's what my bill goes after. What we don't want to see is our school children being taught that America is a fundamentally racist country and that it's divided into two classes, an oppressor class and the oppressed class. And that's the fundamentals of what my bill is going after.
It's not part of the curriculum as critical race theory.
It's not a curriculum. It's a lens put on curriculum, and that's the reason why it's a little bit harder to define. It's not necessarily written in curriculum. It's, like I said, it's a lens that's put on it.
What does your bill do then? So
the bill actually looks at 7 key issues that we don't want to have taught in our K through 12. And I've seen some other versions of the bill that start pushing post-secondary, but we focused on K through 12. And specifically, we want all of our children to be taught that they have access to the American dream, that no child is inherently superior or inferior to another child. And there's, like I said, several other issues that we bring up, but I think that's the key one, and that's why we put it first.
Okay, there's 7 different issues. We'll get to that a little bit more. I want to talk to you, Representative Maynor. You wrote this thought piece, this opinion piece. Talk about, one of the things I know that you talked about in it was that we know that there are states like Texas that have already passed legislation banning critical race theory taught in schools, but you said Georgia doesn't have to follow everybody else.
They absolutely do not have to follow everybody else. Georgia, we live in a great state, and we should be leaders in our thought process. So Representative Thomas is a dear friend of mine. We just do not agree on this topic. He says that, you know, there are some innate things or some inherent things that are not there, but they are there. So I think that's what the difference is, because there are some differences.
You wrote about some personal things, some things that your daughters have experienced. Talk about that a little bit.
So at the time, my little girl was 5 years old, and we were in Sandy Springs at an elementary school. And at birthday parties, it happened on more than one occasion. She would come out of the bouncy houses sad and crying, and she said that the other little girls were telling her that her skin was dirty, that she was ugly because she was brown. And if that happened, unfortunately, to my older daughter, she would have been able to handle that, but my youngest one is not able to handle that. So I made a decision at that point, you know what, I need to be in a more diverse community, because being in a predominantly Caucasian community was not working out for her.
So the feeling is that having critical race theory, having a law that says critical race theory should not be taught in school, that your daughter would not be able to learn, or other students would not be able to learn about certain things you feel are important?
Yes, so the truth is there was slavery in America, and that is suppressive.
I agree.
And so since it was here, and if we don't say that it was here and that it was suppressive, then I just don't even know where to go from there.
You said
No,
yes.
I think that, no, I agree with you. We all do agree. And a matter of fact, my bill in the preamble, it talks about the Civil War was fought over slavery, because that is just a matter of fact. I think listen, I'm sorry to hear about your daughter. That is a terrible story. That breaks my heart. But I want to also point out the fact there's a difference between racism and systemic racism, where we're talking about how whole structures are built to prevent people of color or anyone from being successful. That's the tenets of my bill. That's what I'm trying to go after. Everyone. It was to give you an anecdotal story of mine. I'm a first-generation college student. I served in the Navy to pay for my college, and I cleaned out the bottom of boats. I mean, that's what I had to do to be able to get to where I am, and I know that exists for everybody, and I want to make sure that our children know that the American dream is available to them, and that's the fundamentals and what I'm trying to instill in 888. And 888 it's the first bill that came out of the gate. I've worked on it for 6 months, but you know as well as I do the legislative process. It's early in the legislative process. It's due feedback. I've gotten a lot of feedback. Quite a bit of feedback, and good on both sides, on both sides, and that's good. I think the key is you got to be a good listener, right? So I listen to understand, and I've listened to everybody that's given me comments, and I've taken those, I've incorporated them. We're in the middle of working on a substitute. I think that addresses some of the key problems and bolsters more the language of what I'm trying to push, which is every child has the opportunity to be successful in America.
I don't understand how you can teach about slavery without talking about the, slave owners and the slaves. And you're talking about, oppressors and people who are being oppressed.
So I think that's kind of part of the problem that we get into is we talk about a lot of different things, but my bill specifically has line items, and I would say it's page 10, that talks specifically about the importance of the instruction of history. I absolutely believe that we need to not only teach history, we need to teach history, and we need to look at it the perspectives of those races and what it was like for them, because we have to be able to empathize with one another to be successful. And so that's why I put a whole section in that bill to provide protections to make sure that we could teach these things that I absolutely agree with you are very important.
You've looked at the bill. What are your concerns?
I would say that if there's not systemic racism, I'm going to give you an example. So Martin Luther King went to New York to live in the housing projects, right? To make the point that African Americans did not have fair housing. And if they didn't have fair housing, it was the system that made them not have fair housing. It wasn't their neighbor that said you can't have fair housing. It was the system.
How do you respond to that?
Well, I would say that I agree with you, and I think that is an unbiased, non-political, nonpartisan representation of history. My bill supports that type of concepts being taught. My bill talks more about where we are today and where we are going forward in the future, and that we don't want children to be taught that they're inferior or superior to one another. We don't want that type of education because it's divisive. And so I feel like I've really tried hard in the bill to address those concerns, and like I said, I've put specifics in it to address that. So.
Yeah, well, I know this has been a difficult conversation, and you told me early on that you guys were friends and this was going to be tough. but I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit more.
I just want to say one last thing. I think the key to success in functional government is to have people that disagree but can sit down and respect each other enough. And I'd be more than happy to say on camera nationally that I respect you very much, and I do listen to you. And we've taken comments and feedback, and we're working on a substitute, pick up a couple of things and bolster some language we felt would need to be, I guess, more well-defined. So.
I wanted to talk about some other issues, but we've taken up a lot of time on this, but I think it's been a good discussion. I did want to get in something. Earlier today, I spoke with the director of the Legislative Services section of the Professional Association of Georgia Educators. And she talked about something called the Return to Work bill that you may be familiar with. Governor Brian Kemp announced it last year, and it would allow retired teachers to return to the classroom. Here's what she had to say.
That would allow retired educators, after sitting out a period of 12 months, to come back to work full-time in high-needs areas as determined by their local regional education service agencies, to draw full retirement benefits and teach in those high-needs areas after sitting out for 12 months. The bill was just amended and moved through House Retirement yesterday afternoon to mandate that only educators with 30 or more years of creditable experience are able to qualify under the program, but still, it's an important tool to help serve students in areas of high need.
So I'll address this to you because you're on the Education Committee. The big problem with this is the double dipping, right? The feeling that you're getting your retirement pay and you're also getting another paycheck.
I think we're at a critical time right now, though. You know, the schools are undersourced. There are not enough teachers out there, and so the only way that you're going to be able to get teachers into the classroom, especially experienced ones, we need some experienced teachers in there. I don't think that that's a problem. I would support that.
Okay. I want to get into one more issue, if we can do that really quickly. Talk about kids who want to learn, getting rid of some of what kids are learning in the schools. As Speaker Pro Tem in the House, Jan Jones, she calls them obscene materials. And I just wanted to get your opinion on what you think about that particular bill. And we know that it may be moving tomorrow, possibly.
So I assume you're talking about SB 226,
exactly.
Which is the Senate bill, was authored by Senator Jason Avenattardi. So my understanding of that bill is what it really does, it's a transparency bill. It's a bill that allows, sets up a mechanism to, if a parent finds something that's objectionable, it sets up a mechanism for them to work through the school system to make sure that that it's addressed if it's objectionable, and that's really what this bill does. It's a transparency and a parental Bill of Rights.
And it's getting some more work,
yep.
Apparently, although we may see it come back through committee. It's not in your committee, it's not in education, it's in the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. Your feelings on it, and we don't have a lot of time.
You know, someone actually came up to me at a conference about that particular subject, and when she told me, I said, what? So if there are items like that in the libraries, I don't think that they should be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I would agree with you on that, too. Yeah, they shouldn't be there.
Okay. Well, it's the discussion we're going to continue to have because both of everything we've talked about, we're going to hear about in the coming weeks. Thank you both for being here. I really appreciate it. All right, then. Coming up, more on lawmakers, including a bill that would provide a pathway for adults to get a diploma. You're watching Lawmakers on GPB.
Cigna is a proud partner of Georgia Public Broadcasting and Georgia Lawmakers. Cigna's mission is to improve the health, well-being, and peace of mind of those we serve. More at Cigna.com to learn how you can help support your employees' physical and emotional well-being.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy, The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Georgia Humanities, connecting people and communities across Georgia to encourage conversation, education, and understanding. Find out more at www.georgiahumanities.org.
GPB is free to all citizens of Georgia across 9 television stations, 18 radio stations, and innovative education and digital divisions. GPB Radio breaks down important issues happening statewide, bringing you unbiased news and information from Georgia journalists and NPR.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Wherever you are in Georgia, we're glad that you're listening.
Show your support by visiting gpb.org.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. We're going to continue our discussion on education. I spoke earlier today to the chair of the Senate Committee on Education and Youth, Republican Senator Chuck Payne, about several classroom issues. I began by asking him about a bill that drew lots of attention last year. The Raising the Age legislation would have increased the age that a student can leave school from the current 16 years old to 17.
There's still a lot of questions if just raising the age was the answer or not, and I think that was good debate on our committee. And so I did a resolution later on to create a study committee throughout the summer on raising the age. And we had 5 meetings from Savannah to Northwest Georgia with different superintendents and different, just rural and urban, trying to get a look at both rural and urban and the needs. But it's just at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that we all knew that, we're one of only 15 states that's still at 16. And as a juvenile probation officer, I tell people all the time, I said, I was very aware of the fact that, 50+% of those in our penitentiaries have no high school education or equivalent. So we can either pay a little bit more on the front end, or we can pay a little bit more or pay a whole lot more on the back end. And so it was really just to look at that, and really I think what came out of that course of study throughout the summer was, we already have Georgia milestone data, and coming up, developing some standard of measure at the 5th and 6th grade level to go ahead and identify those kids that we already know that are heading down that path that would possibly quit school when they turn 16 or 17 if we raise the age, and put wraparound services in place.
Got to ask you about a couple of issues where the Speaker David Ralston talked about parents are more interested in what's going on in the classroom, and that's why we're having some issues bubble up. And one of them is critical race theory. What are your feelings?
That's an errored path, in my view, to go down. That, if you want to teach it as a theory, in my personal view, in a college setting, but K through 12 is supposed to be about learning. And at the end of the day, the last word is theory. And if it's a theory, then let it go to the higher institutions, but in K through 12 education, let's stay to the reading, writing, and the arithmetic.
The other bill that has come up that deals with some parents wanting to have more say in the classroom deals with obscene materials. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I think that parents at the end of the day, are the number one. The child is the person responsible for that child in the classroom, and so I think the parents should be involved. I encourage people forever as a juvenile probation officer, and it's just amazing to me how many parents you would ask, well, how's he doing in school? And you could see that those who had no idea how their own child was doing in school. So parents have to have accessibility to know what's going on in the classroom, to be a part of what's going on in the classroom, because at the end of the day, education is the burden and responsibility of that parent as much as it is that teacher in the classroom. Anything else coming through your committee that you find interesting? I really haven't looked that far ahead, to be honest with you. I'm still trying to save a bill that I had passed out of my committee last year, and also a bill that, and it passed through the House Education Committee, amended. We added two, but I had a bill, Senate Bill 220, that created the Commission on Civics Education. And to me, and I take the words from my father's civics lessons, and as I would teach to kids as a probation officer, and that lesson is, son, you can never navigate your tomorrow until you've taken account for your yesterday. Well, that's true for, not only individuals, but nations too. And that civics lesson, People have to understand how our government operates.
Now, after he spoke to me, Senator Chuck Payne went on to chair a meeting this afternoon of the Senate Education and Youth Committee. And among those there is my guest who serves on that committee, Democratic Senator Lester Jackson of Savannah. Welcome to Lawmakers.
Well, thank you very much.
So let's begin with the question I asked him at first, and that is the Raise the Age bill. You favor it, and it looks like he doesn't in the sense that he'd like to see more wraparound services. Why do you think that's such a good idea?
Well, I not only favor the bill, I introduced the bill.
Okay.
Because the raising the high school age from 16 to 17, first of all, having a high school dropout age of 16 is an antiquated law. It was passed in the 1940s, and it does not address where we are in Georgia at this point. We are a high skill based on vocation and technology. And allowing our young people to drop out of school at 16 does not only that individually harm, but it harms our great state. We, in Georgia currently, at 16, you can't smoke, you can't drink alcohol, you can't drive in a car unaccompanied, but we will allow you to drop out of high school. We're giving our young people a disservice as public servants. When we're in the business of trying to help young people, but allowing them to walk away from getting a quality education, we're actually hurting not only these students and their families, we're hurting this great state.
You had some numbers too on how many students are out there.
Well, currently in Georgia, between the ages of 21 and 35, we have over 60,000 Georgians walking around without a high school diploma. Right in Savannah, Georgia, there are 11,000 Georgians between the ages of 21 and 35 without a high school diploma. In Macon, there are 10,000 Georgians without a high school diploma between the ages of 21 and 35. And we ask yourselves, what happened to these Georgians? You know, we find out people with a high school diploma get to have the opportunity to get a livable wage jobs. People without a high school diploma live below the poverty rate, most of them. And so when we as public servants and not politicians should be about the business of helping our neighbors. And that's what this bill does. Raising the high school age requires us to stay in school not just 1 year longer, but gives them the skills to do more to make livable wage jobs.
Okay, so then another bill that would help some of those students moved a bit today, and that deals with a pathway for people without a diploma to get a diploma. Talk about that a little bit.
And what we talked about is that addresses those young people from the ages of 21 to 35 to give them a pathway to receive a high school diploma. But it's not just a high school diploma. This bill is a comprehensive bill that talks about wraparound services, talk about daycares inside these new school buildings. It talks about social workers and job opportunities and how to fill out applications. So it's all inclusive of addressing the ideas of high school dropouts and having them being viable citizens in our great state. But more than that, it's a bill that talks about a public-private partnership where private investors are coming in and building schools and building instructions so the state isn't taking up the whole cost. So it's truly a public-private venture.
So there will be schools built just for this age group, 21 to 35 years old, to go back to school and get a diploma, different from a GED.
Different from a GED, and we think there are inherent differences between a GED and a high school diploma.
Explain that real quick.
Well, right now, this program is it's a pilot program. We're going to have one based in Savannah, Georgia, and another pilot program based in Macon, and we're going to see how it works, how we can address the high school dropout age, but how we can take these individuals, that many of them are making minimum wage jobs, or most of them aren't making livable wage jobs, and trying to get them back into society to help them be a good role model for their families, but also make them be a great public servants to themselves, and many of them want to do better.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm sure we'll hear more about it. And thank you for joining us tonight on Lawmakers. We'll be back tomorrow.